Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today, I am going to discuss my thoughts on the Britney Spears documentaries. I've seen the New York Times one on Hulu. I've seen the Netflix one, Britney versus Spears or something like that, I think it's called. And I'll put the exact names below, but I am a therapist and I am just gonna give you my thoughts from that perspective. But also from my personal perspective, because let me tell you, this really sets me off. Like, some of the people in this story really set me off. So I am not completely like in therapist mode watching this. Like, I have a lot of charge around Britney's dad, and I am not going to sound very empathic or understanding of him, just to warn you. I have someone in my life who reminds me of him a great deal, and it brings up all those feelings, and I'm not going to beat around the bush and say I think that there might be some good in him, because I don't know. So just saying that up front so you know. Not objective here. Okay. So I'm going to insert clips to highlight my points along the way rather than kind of watch it with you. Hopefully that will help give you a feel. If you haven't seen it, you'll know, it will help give you a feel. And if you have seen it, you'll already know what I'm talking about anyway, I'm sure. So let's get into it.
They said, if I don't want to do the New Vegas show, I don't have to. It was like lifting literally 200 pounds off of me. He immediately the next day put me on lithium out of nowhere. He took me off my normal meds I'd been on for 5 years. And lithium is a very, very strong and completely different medication compared to what I was used to. Not only did my family not do a goddamn thing, my dad was all for it. He loved every minute of it. The control he had over someone as powerful as me, 100,000%, he loved it. Ma'am, my dad and anyone involved in this conservatorship should be in jail. The last time I spoke to you made me feel like I was dead, like I didn't matter. And I'm telling you this again so maybe you can understand the depth and the degree and the damage that they did to me back then. It's embarrassing and demoralizing what I've been through, and that's the main reason. I've never said it openly, and mainly I didn't want to say it openly because...
First, I want to start with her dad, and let's just get this out of the way. Jamie Spears. I loathe him. I did grow up in the South, but so there is something about hearing this Southern man control her and speak really aggressively and with a hostile tone and in a controlling way that really sets me off, because I just know so many men like that. Think about the part where in the voice recording that all the documentaries play of Britney speaking, and it's the one where she's finally really speaking to what's true for her, and it sounds very grounded and more assured of herself. And she says something like, and I'll insert the clip, but says something like, it's like he so enjoys the power he has over someone, or the control over someone as powerful as she is. And I thought that was a big statement. Everyone could feel that, I think, hearing it. First of all, she's owning her power and how powerful she is, which in so much of these documentaries, you don't hear her coming at you from a very empowered place. I mean, of course not, but for contrast, here's her speaking in a different voicemail.
Hi, my name's Britney Spears. I called you earlier. I'm calling again because I just wanted to make sure during the process of getting the conservatorship that my father threatened me several times that he'll take my children away. I just want to be guaranteed that there is more time with the process of you guys taking care of everything and things are being the same as far as my custodial.
The baby voice situation with Britney that we hear off and on. Sometimes she speaks from a place that feels more centered in herself, and sometimes we hear the baby voice. And I just wanted to speak to that by saying, I think that's about the power dynamic between her and these men in her life. I think it's a way she gets taken care of, and it comes across as non-threatening, when I think she intuitively knows somewhere that her power is so threatening to these men like her father. So the baby voice helps keep her safe in a way. So for her to say that is huge, and to own that he's envious of something in her and he has to control it. He cannot stand it. So to be able to say that and own that, I thought that was huge. But I think it's the most powerful statement in all of the documentaries, because I think it really highlights the dynamic for the two of them and the thing that underlies the development of this in Britney's life. And because if you think about, if she has a father who will do this to her, I didn't hear 1 second of him showing real concern for her well-being. And you certainly don't feel that in how she's being controlled and managed, and how people are taken out of her life and things are just decided for her it doesn't sound like any consideration for how it might feel to her. So I just don't think that's new behavior for her father. I think that she probably grew up, I mean, I'm almost certain, I can't see the past, but I'm almost certain that he was like that for her growing up. And so she has been dealing with a father like this her whole life. So that really sets the stage for something called complex PTSD, where it's part of the fabric of her life and how she has developed as a person. She has a caregiver who does not care about her, who competes with her, who wants to control her, manage her, treats her as if she's a thing and not a person, doesn't show any real, genuine capacity for empathy for her. She has been dealing with that all of her life. And then on top of it, this happens where she's essentially imprisoned by her father and controlled and managed as an adult. So she layered on top of what's already woven into her fabric of just her core is this new thing of dealing with being imprisoned. Think about what that would do to one's mind. If any one of us experiences any one acute trauma, we reel and we have to think about it and process it and work through it. And so imagine it being layered and layered and layered, and then throughout your life. And then you're an adult and you're put into a conservatorship where even more is layered on top of an already shaky foundation. You can feel in both of the documentaries her state of mind, because I think both documentaries are kind of messy. There are so many things we don't know. It's kind of all over the place, and you kind of don't know what's real for her, and you kind of don't know what's true, and she's saying this and she's saying this, and it's contradictory. And I think that gives you such a good sense of what it's like in her mind as this very traumatized person. It's chaos in there, She's operating from fear and layers of trauma and guilt and shame. And how can anyone make a clear decision about anything from that place? So the fact that she was able to get to a place where she could say, he enjoys controlling someone as powerful as me, is huge, because coming out of this really dark place inside of her, it's such a huge proclamation. She, in that moment, is saving herself. And there's this whole movement about Save Britney, and I think that's wonderful to support her. But in the end, it's so important that she save herself. And so I'm going to say more about that in a bit, and the importance of that in a bit. We'll kind of get there. I did want to touch on and I think some have called it like the sexist kind of undertones here and stuff like that. But I think, I really don't want to waste time on her dad and diagnosing him or speculating about that. But narcissism toward the like sociopath, psychopath end, where he completely is devoid of empathy. That's my feel on him. And while I do think that probably at the start of the conservatorship, she does seem like things were not going well for her. It seems like there was drug use and abuse, and she probably wasn't taking care of herself. But if every person who went through that and experienced like use of drugs or loss of her children or divorce or whatever it is, and, you know, fall into some dark despair, if everyone who that happened to had a conservator, like we'd all be a conservator to somebody, and we'd all have one. So it makes no sense. It's not justified, in my opinion, that she would have a conservator. But I could understand more so in the beginning how that could be justified in a roundabout way. It's just that it extends for so long, for 13 years. Sorry, got a text message. It extends so long for 13 years. And over the course of 13 years, it really doesn't make sense. So that's the really infuriating part.
In Truth Boulevard in Studio City. I watched her sit there and put the moves together. And we're talking about, you know, what colors to use, you know, the scenery and the change of scenery and the backdrop and costumes and...
I mean, again, like, I always just felt bad for her. I felt bad that, like, this was her reality in her world. Where, like, she gave me a letter and then all of a sudden, this huge fire alarm goes off. It was pretty shortly after that I stopped working with her. I think at that point, it was obvious that we were pretty close and pretty good friends. And, you know, like, Britney had met a bunch of my friends. You know, she had, you know, like, sort of come into my life. And, you know, it was just sad to think that she was going to be alone again.
So about the sexist stuff, she seems like she did grow up in a house where, well, she grew up in a culture, Southern culture, and I grew up in that culture. So there's definitely misogyny there and definitely gender bias there. And as there is everywhere, but it's very pronounced. And I felt it so deeply growing up. I hated it. So I can sort of feel into that place in her, like always being treated like that. And then on top of it, her dad is not well, emotionally and mentally. So having a father like that who probably treats women like crap and wants to control things. There's this, in one clip, he is talking about what he thinks is best for her. And he clearly doesn't know what's best for her. Does she need help? Absolutely. Does she need support? Absolutely. But his version of help, no, it doesn't align with like what's going to make her feel good and actually heal. It makes no sense. But it seems it does have a slight like sexist or misogynist feel like he knows best for this like crazy girl, what she needs. Then it begs the question though, where are the women? And I haven't done a ton of research on this. I only know what's told to us in the documentaries, and the first one I saw, the New York Times, I saw a while ago, so I don't totally remember everything in it. But it begs the question, like, where are the women? Where's her mom? What happened? And that makes me think, like, what was it like for her at home? And what did her mom teach her about what she had to take from her dad? Because her mom chose her dad. And so I wonder how that went at home. Why is a man in control here? And then, of course, we see this imprinted in Britney in a way, this use of men. There's like man is most powerful. And this is my theory. She ends up latching on to men again and again and again to it seems like to save her. So she does find some nice enough men who sound like they really care about her, and they really want to do something for her, and they stick by her. I mean, I can only go on the documentaries again. Based on that, it seems like they do care about her and they stick by her, and until they're not allowed to anymore. And it's like she latches on to these men who might be able to help her, save her, or pull her out of whatever she's in. And I think that can really happen with people who are very traumatized. You can get into two roles where they're the victim and you feel like you have to save them, or vice versa. And of course, anyone looking at her would feel like, I need to do something. I need to figure this out, or I need to act, or I need to stay by her. I'm the only one who can help her. And you do see a series of men feeling bad when they have to leave. And that cinematographer in particular, he felt really bad for her. And when he was sort of kicked out of the posse, and worried about like her not having his world and his friends. And so that is like, and by the way, that's genuine concern about what's this like for Britney, which we do not get the sense that her father ever has for her. And so some of these men really do think about what this is like for her. And so of course you'd want to latch on to them. But my point about that is to go back to what I was saying about rescuing herself. So she keeps hoping someone will save her, I think. And eventually she does actually figure out she has to save herself, and she speaks for herself. And that is the thing that actually moves this along, is her getting to that point. And probably she was able to do that with all the help from everyone, but she ultimately did save herself. And that is what all of us have to learn. When anything has ever happened to us and we have to heal, eventually we learn like we are the ones that make it different in the future. Nobody else is going to do that. We have to make things different. One other thing I wanted to say is, on top of all of the trauma and all the trauma-related feelings like shame, guilt, sadness, fear, depression, I'm sure, anxiety, how can you see any clear path in that place? And then I think on top of it, she's being given different meds, and some of them she wants and some of them she doesn't. It does sound like she wants the stimulants, and they kind of use that to control her, which is fucked up. And that was just disturbing for me, that you would use this drug, the stimulant drug, to woo her and control her and get her to do what you wanted, and just perpetuate probably something inside of her that is unwell. Just maddening. Which brings me to my point, which is, so on top of all those traumatized feelings of sadness, anger, regret, shame, blah, 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 I would imagine feeling such rage, but having nowhere for it to go. There's no one, she could direct it at her dad, but what the fuck is that gonna do? Nothing. It's not gonna do anything. So just, that is in there, and who couldn't think straight in that place? So I just say this again to sort of highlight her state of mind. And if you're wondering about contradictions and things she's saying and doing and curious about, and what do we not know and what do we know and all that, like, keep in mind, I think when you're confused like that, you are experiencing a little bit of what it's like for her. It's been so confusing and so crazy making. So we would call that countertransference in the therapy room. So you can, if you're feeling that makes sense, because that's what she'd be feeling too. If you're feeling rage, that makes sense, because that's what she'd be feeling too. And she may not be able to express it, and we don't really see a lot of that, but you gotta think it's in there somewhere. And it's got to come out at some point. And on that note, I did want to say something about the future for her. The crazy making thing is something like the security that she relied on, and was she aware that they were monitoring her? And I got to think she's probably intuitive enough to have thought about that. Like, I'm probably being monitored. I mean, she can't be in the middle of that and not be paranoid about that, So she probably knew on some level, but how confusing would that be to have to trust these people, because you do need them for security, and yet they are the ones also hurting you. And And that's with any child too. It's like so confusing as a child to have a parent who's supposed to take care of you and yet they are also hurting you, but you need them for survival. And she is just reliving that childhood trauma every day. And so it's just re-traumatized and re-traumatized. I would say for the future for her, there is a long road ahead of her. Like, you know, assuming she gets to live a stable enough life on her own, she still has so much work to do, because to undo all of this that's happened to her and unpack it and look at it and go through it so that she doesn't keep repeating it for herself and getting herself into more situations that are going to be problematic, because that is just what traumatized people do. It's what I've done. It's what so many traumatized people do. You end up repeating some of the situations that have happened. So in order for her to not do that, she'll have to do a lot of work. And I imagine her trust in others is so far gone. And she seems like a very warm, caring, lovely person to be around. I don't know if deep down in her she trusts people, except for, like, I would imagine someone like Felicia, her old assistant, who seems incredibly intuitive, and that's attunement. Like, what Felicia shows is actual attunement to Britney's need.
And we will be here for you.
If you could talk to Britney, what would you want her to know? Like, if she's watching this, what would you say?
Okay. And Britt, first off, I would make you giggle. And second off, I want you to remember all the funny things and all the fun times. I want you to remember how strong you are, how talented you are, how silly you are, how goofy you are, and that heart of yours is gigantic, and my goodness, I told you every day how much I loved you. If I had one penny for every fan that's just reached out to me to send their love to you, boy, would I be a rich woman. Hang in there. Your voice is coming back. You are louder and prouder and more powerful than I've seen you in a really long time. And I love you, and I will support you no matter what. And I'm going to cry, because you know I don't like to cry. It makes my nose big and red. I love you.
That's what Britney needed. So she has this actual sense of what is needed. And that is the contrast between Felicia and Britney's dad, or anyone else we've really heard from Britney's camp, her family, in quotes.
She did all of that, and you were telling me that her father's gonna get a conservatorship. It didn't make sense to me.
I'm from In Touch magazine.
Let me give you a fucking clue. I don't talk to no fucking.
Why don't you talk to us?
Because I'd never have talked to anybody, you dumb fuck.
I mean, just think about how easily those words fell out of his mouth.
So she'll have to work really hard at learning to trust someone and learning to build a relationship she can stick with, probably. It seems like she really wants to be in a relationship and wants to have someone close to her, but to really trust that she can be herself and she'll be okay, and that she'll be loved and cared for who she is, no matter what. Like, I think that's going to take some time for her. So I think in that sense, there's a long road ahead. Of course, she has the money to get whatever help she needs, and I hope she does, because she does seem like a good soul, honestly. I mean, that's not a clinical assessment, but she does seem like a good soul. I think she has been troubled, and also, how could you not be? But it's time that she take responsibility for her own life, and she's got to figure out how to do that now. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts, and anything you think I missed or didn't talk about or would like to hear me talk about more. Those are just kind of my quick and dirty thoughts that I've pulled together watching it, but I'm really curious to know any other thoughts on the matter. So thank you for watching. Thank you for getting this far, and I hope to see you next time. Let me know if there's other stuff too that you would like me to comment on or think about with you. Okay, bye.